Carlos Sainz is in a tough situation as far as his F1 career is concerned. The guy went from victories one season and standing on top of podiums to basically being kicked out of Formula 1 if he can't secure a seat for the 2025 season. None of it is because of his own performance. Here's everything you need to know about Carlos Sainz's 2025 F1 dilemma. So just what is going on with Sainz's F1 career? Well, the guy was a top-tier F1 driver racing for Ferrari.
Max Verstappen, for the first time ever, is champion of the world!
Not only that, he was one of the only drivers besides Max Verstappen to have won a Grand Prix in the last 18 months. So say what you will about him, but he's clearly at the top of his game. But even with all that, he doesn't have a confirmed seat for 2025. Crazy, right? But it gets worse. There's a chance he might have to move down the grid next year to secure a seat. So just why is all this happening to Sainz? Well, it's because Ferrari has decided to sign Lewis Hamilton. No one saw this coming. Even Carlos must have been completely shocked. Sure, it totally makes sense for Ferrari's end, but it still means that Carlos got handed the short straw. That said, it's not all bad news for the guy, because it's almost unthinkable that a 29-year-old in his prime wouldn't have a spot in the grid next year. So really, all it comes down to is if he finds a spot that actually aligns with his status and performance level as a driver. Plus, Carlos's situation is totally different from many other drivers who've been dropped by their teams before. Usually, these drivers are let go because they're getting too slow or underperforming. But Carlos, he's not any of those things. The guy rarely crashes, plus he's got a good few years of racing ahead of him. After all, he hasn't won a championship yet. The more you look at this whole situation, the more it becomes clear that he's a solid driver who seems to be getting sidelined for no apparent reason. You can't help but feel for the guy. But hey, this also means that he's going to be a great consideration for other teams. So the question remains, just where will Carlos end up? Well, even though he's a great driver, his options might be somewhat limited. The truth is, there just aren't any good seats available in Formula 1 right now, except for Red Bull. But you can totally forget about Carlos finding a spot there. After all, there is no way Max Verstappen is leaving that team, especially when you take into account his current domination. But Sainz's Red Bull dreams haven't been crushed just yet. Rumors are there's something big happening over at Red Bull. Something about Christian Horner and Adrian Newey. If either of those two were to get kicked, that might open up the spot Carlos is so clearly in need of. That said, there's another team Sainz could get an offer from, and that's Mercedes. But hold on, this isn't the golden ticket you might think it is. Let's not forget Mercedes isn't exactly the top team it used to be. They're now battling with the Alphas, and honestly, it seems tough for Carlos to go with him, even if he's given a seat. Oh, and Aston Martin? Fernando Alonso just signed a contract there. Lance Stroll isn't going anywhere. He'll probably still be there when he's 85, coming in straight from a senior facility to drive out on the track.
Lando Norris wins for the first time in Formula 1. It's victory in Miami for Norris.
As for McLaren, they've got Lando Norris locked down and Oscar Piastri isn't going anywhere. That pretty much covers the mid-tier teams. And just when you think things can look bad, Carlos is quickly running out of options from the remaining teams too. Williams is currently P10 in the Constructors, and as for Haas, no one wants to go there. And then there's Sauber, which is being bought out by Audi. Nico Hülkenberg just signed a contract there, and teams usually want an experienced driver and maybe a hotshot young rookie. It's gotta be said, Audi was actually considering Sainz about a year ago, but it's hard to say if that offer still holds up. There's no doubt there have been some talks between the two behind the scenes, but more recently Audi has indicated they're not willing to wait any longer for Sainz, which is why they've gone for Hülkenberg instead. Maybe if Sainz had decided to leave Ferrari when he was given the initial offer last year, his career prospects might have been looking really different right now. But you can't really blame him for not leaving his team back then. After all, who knew he'd go from being a star player to someone who's left out in the streets overnight? In the end, Carlos waited a bit too long, and now it seems like Audi doesn't want him anymore. On the track, he might appear happy, but deep down, like every other Ferrari driver, he's hurting. His future in Formula 1 is at risk. So if it wasn't clear enough already, Carlos is in a seriously tough situation. And it's unbelievable that he's even in this mess at all. Like, how does a driver go from competing for victories one season, standing on top of podiums and giving everything he's got, to find himself potentially being kicked out of Formula 1 in just one season? Job security is really not a thing in the world of F1, huh? Some fans even think that his time in Formula 1 might have come to an end. Or at the very least, he'd have to take a break before he can figure out what to do. Seriously, it would be truly unfortunate to see such a talent move to NASCAR, IndyCar, or a similar series. Let's be real. At 29, he's not exactly a young gun, but he's not nearing the end of his career either. But drivers like Ricciardo, Perez, Hamilton, and Alonso, who are all in their early 30s or older, are unique cases because they've been around for so long. For now, the guy has stated that he's in negotiations with multiple teams and wants to pursue the best possible future for his career. But there aren't many good cars available in the grid. Unless Sergio Perez is ousted, Sainz could potentially take his place at Red Bull. But if Daniel Ricciardo has performed well this season, that seat would have been his. So Sainz should be thanking Ricciardo for potentially giving him another shot at a top seat. But realistically, Perez probably isn't going to be kicked out. So Sainz's only options might be backmarker teams for a year or two. This makes Carlos's future kind of bleak if you think about it. At best, if he's still good enough and willing to drive in Formula 1, he might be able to jump in once either Alonso or Hamilton retire, or if someone else gets dropped. But if he feels disrespected and ends up in a backmarker team for the next few years, his motivation might be too low, especially after being unwanted by so many teams for so long. And could you blame him? A player like him definitely doesn't deserve to go through all this. Like he's arguably the best unemployed driver in the world. Which is a downright silly thought. He's won a race this season, scored multiple podiums, and unlike Charles Leclerc, he's been consistently winning in the last 3 years. The fact that other teams aren't talking about him more almost feels like a conspiracy against the guy. Red Bull hasn't said anything, Mercedes hasn't really talked about it at all. Aston Martin has put a block on it. Oh, and McLaren isn't an option for him either. Because of all this, you can't help but feel bad for him. But who knows, this might be part of Sainz's master plan. Maybe he'll leave F1, become a pro golfer, and dominate every tournament. Or he'll go to a backmarker team and lead them to a championship. Fans will just have to wait and see what he's got cooking. He'll definitely bounce back, but just when that happens is a little bit unclear for now. For now, there's not much that can be done besides just hoping things turn around for Sainz. Let's hope that George Russell performs poorly, or pray that the next Mercedes driver also messes up. Either that or Sergio Perez doesn't even manage a podium throughout the rest of this season. If these things happen, Sainz could be in luck. There could be more F1 in his future. If not, well, then it's just a waiting game. And man, he could be waiting for a really long time. Anyway, if you want to check out some more content on F1 racing and its history, make sure to click on this next video.